This is the two of us today. So if you haven't met me before, my name's Kelly O'Dore, and I'm the marketing director for Bookster, which is a property management software company based here in Scotland. And Patrice, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Patrice. I'm the market manager for Scotland at Airbnb. So delighted to be here. And thank you, Kelly, obviously, for having me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. So our agenda today is going to be split into two. It's mostly Patrice, and I'll do a little bit at the end. So yeah, we'll come back to that in a little bit. I think, first of all, just to help us understand who has joined us today, what your kind of relationship with us and with Airbnb is, I'm going to put up a quick poll, which I've done now once before, and it worked okay. So let's see how we go. So if I switch a poll on, you should see it in the chat area. And the question is, do you currently use Airbnb? Whether, mostly really, I'm thinking as a kind of property manager side of things. Obviously, if you're here from another channel or from a cleaning company, then this isn't relevant for you, but this will give us a good idea. Okay, I can see we've got numbers coming in already. That's really handy. Okay, so Patrice, roughly 70 to 80% of people are using Airbnb already.
Okay.
And just under 30% no. So I'll leave that running on the right-hand side so we can see the numbers coming in. And I'll move over to your slides, Patrice, and you can take over.
Anyway, okay, thank you. So hello, everyone, again. So very delighted to be here in Edinburgh on Kelly's invitation for the start of this partnership between Airbnb and Bookster. So what I'm going to do today is actually tell you more about the Airbnb site. If you can move on to next slide, please, Kelly. So on booking trends, especially for this year, I'm going to focus on that. And if you can move to the next, please, also on the agenda. So I'm going to, first of all, obviously, tell you a bit about Airbnb, who we are, the founding story. I assume most people are already familiar. I'll go very quickly, probably, especially if most of you already use Airbnb. And then I'll tell you about those trends we're seeing, especially how it changed compared to during the pandemic, obviously. And then how to use those trends actually to your benefit. So, and that's probably the part that you're going to be interested in. So let's start with the founding story. And you can see the background. It's the listing, the very first listing, basically. I think most people are familiar with the story, but this is Brian Chesky's apartment in San Francisco on the occasion of a conference where people couldn't find a place to stay in San Francisco. They had the idea to offer actual air beds and breakfast in the living room. And the idea came up. And if you move to the next slide, please, you can see how big it grew. Well, that's the first website, actually, Airbnb and Breakfast, that I just mentioned. And if you move on to the next, please. And today we have more than 5.5 million listings on Airbnb worldwide. So that's more than 10 years ago. That's actually pretty quick. So more than 100,000 cities across the world, 220 countries, and more than 800 million guest arrivals to this day on Airbnb. So this has grown massively, as you can see. So
I was just looking at that photograph of the property and comparing it to what we say now for our property managers, how they should, stage their apartments and what they should have, their lighting and so on. And actually, when you look at that original photograph, we've come a long way, really.
Yeah, absolutely. don't use this one as an example. Obviously, that was the first try, definitely. So, yeah, actually, we start with the releases. You might have heard already, especially if you're already using Airbnb, that Airbnb released new features last month, 11th of May, exactly. So this is basically the first page when you type airbnb.co.uk, .com.ie, wherever you are. And now, before you even enter a destination, what you see are categories. All listings on Airbnb are now put in categories. This is done automatically. You don't need to do anything specific. This is done by an algorithm based on the pictures, based on the keywords actually that you're using in the title or the description. And now people can actually start looking by those categories before they even look at a place to go. So this is brand new. This is really exciting. As you can see here, this was a design category that Brian Chesky especially is really keen on this specific topic. And again, you don't have to do anything. Your listings will be automatically, categorized wherever they belong. If it's a barn, if it's a cottage, if it's by the seaside, this will be done automatically. So that's very exciting times. And actually, if you could move to further slide, next slide, sorry, Kelly, thank you. Beyond those categories, obviously, we're still using tons of filters on Airbnb if you want to really refine your search. As you can see, you can really select a very specific type of house you're looking for. You can obviously select other features, other amenities. I'll go more into details a bit later in this presentation. But as you can see, every type of property can definitely be advertised as such on Airbnb. That's really a key point. So it's not the only release we had last month. Yes, for some actual examples in Scotland, as you can see, very different types of listings that are live right now. There's a yacht on the top right corner. There's a weird, I forgot how they call that, moon house, something like that on the bottom left. Cottages, bungalows, all the kind of properties that we actually can find here in Scotland. So pretty interesting. And so on next slide, this time I think it's the right one. Yes, thank you, Kelly. This is another new feature that was released last month. So the split stays, very simple, very basic. If someone is looking for a trip that is at least 1 week long, or obviously or even longer, we're actually going to start offering to split the stay between two listings. Again, there's nothing for you to do, provided the listing is available for at least 3 nights and you don't put a maximum length of stay or at least of a week because it's from a week. Your listing could be actually made available through this feature. If someone is looking for a stay for 1 week or longer in your area, we might actually offer them to split the stay between two listings in the same booking process. So that's also a very brand new feature. And so moving on, we're gonna move on the part that's probably more interesting for most of you. I guess it's bookers' behaviors in the new world. That is, what trends are we seeing right now on Airbnb? So guests are booking more than ever before. We finally, hopefully, recovered from that pandemic. And as you can see, the bolder line actually on that graph is actually what the bookings are since Q1 2022. We finally increased. The nights booked have grew 32% compared to the first quarter of 2019. So that is right before the pandemic struck, obviously. People are increasingly confident in booking further in advance as well. Although Airbnb has always been kind of a last-minute website, now we have people who are booking much longer than they ever used to on Airbnb. And lead time surpassing the 2019 levels by the end of first quarter of this year. And as of the end of April, we had 30% more nights booked for the summer than we had by that time in 2019. So that's, again, I'm not saying it's not a last minute website. It still is, obviously, but this is starting to get a bit better for Airbnb in the sense that people already from Q1 were already booking for this summer. So confidence, especially, is what we see in here, and that's actually the good news. So moving on to next slide, talking about cross-border travel, the return of international demand. That's something that we've been missing for a long time, and it finally started last summer, to be honest, when everything was reopening. And first of all, and that's quite interesting to see in Scotland, in UK, generally speaking, but including in Scotland, we seeing mostly the guests from North America, USA, obviously, but also Canada, who are back and even more than before, and booking even more than before since the beginning of this year. And we actually have the numbers of bookings from abroad have tripled compared to the first quarter last year, and returning to the levels of before the pandemic. Interesting to note, though, and you might have noticed yourself, that the guests from Europe, the rest of Europe, so especially France, Germany, or Spain, that used to be very many, are not back to the same levels as before. We suspect, even though you can't say for sure, but we suspect that this might have more to do with Brexit and some uncertainty around the requirements for people to travel from rest of Europe to UK. And it could very well be. And moving on to the next slide, please, Kelly.
Oh, one moment.
We froze. I think we're going to talk about the length of stay. Are we? Not yet, actually. Thank you. So guests are returning to cities. That's something we observed, obviously, from the beginning of the pandemic, is that people who were still booking when they could were actually going away from cities. The non-urban destinations, actually, and close to their home, actually, were very popular. We continue to see this trend, by the way. It's still there in the first quarter of this year. Non-urban gross nights booked increased 80% compared to the first quarter of 2019. Whereas now we're seeing finally that return of bookings to the big cities. In Scotland, obviously, I mean, Edinburgh and Glasgow, those are big, high density destinations, as we define them, that we've been struggling for quite a while, unfortunately. But now it grew 80% compared to the first quarter of last year, and it's now exceeding the levels of 2019, quarter one 2019. So that's the good news. It is recovering. It's still not there yet, obviously, but it's finally people are getting back to the big cities. And that's definitely a great news.
Okay, so realistically, what we're looking at with this slide is in urban locations, it's good news, and if it's non-urban, it's great news. So
Exactly, it's still
we're
going well
we're in a
outside of cities, but big cities are finally getting back to pre-pandemic levels, and that was a big concern for 2 years. And I'm pretty sure if some people in the call are actually renting in Edinburgh and Glasgow, they certainly know what I'm talking about. But now seeing those guests coming back, absolutely.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing. I was looking at Edinburgh bookings yesterday, and this summer is, already we're maxing out. There's just such a big demand for people coming back to the cities. It's
Indeed.
wild and amazing. Okay, I'll just move on to the next one.
Yes, thanks. So yeah, what guests are searching for right now? So I'm going to go through those three main categories. So flexibility, longer stays that I mentioned earlier, and workation and traveling with family. So flexibility, I mean people who are selecting a cancellation policies that allow them for a full refund under certain circumstances. On Airbnb, those are the flexible and moderate cancellation policies. As you might know, there is even a filter in the search results that allow you to only look at listings with those cancellation policies. And this, as you can see, this is a split of bookings by cancellation policy in Scotland. As you can see, more than half of all nights booked on Airbnb in Scotland are on those policies, flexible, moderate. So people are still looking for this flexibility. So it's very important to, I mean, as far as it's possible for you, obviously, to try and offer the most flexible cancellation policy. So this is still a reality. So on longer stays, indeed. So two things. First of all, this is on what we call long-term stays. It's actually monthly stays. This is something we observe mostly in big cities, actually. In Scotland, it's in Edinburgh, Glasgow. People who are booking for at least a month and even longer than that, or that actually keep extending the stay. We've had people in Glasgow, for example, who told me that people were booking only for like 2-3 months, keep extending the stay, and ended up staying for a year and a half in the same listing in Glasgow, which is quite impressive. So as you can see, the demand for this kind of long stays have really increased, and that's really been supporting the urban destination that I just mentioned that are only now recovering. So this is actually a very good opportunity if you can afford actually to offer your place for long stays like this. There is demand, and as long as you offer it for a month or more with dedicated price, monthly prices, obviously, your listing will be featured as such if someone is looking for long stays on Airbnb. So definitely an opportunity to grab. And on the next, thank you. It's actually still on longer stays, but here I'm rather talking about weekly stays, less than a month. Let me explain. I'm mostly talking about destinations outside of cities. In that case, say vacation rental. Especially, I heard feedback from people in the Highlands, for example, or the Isle of Skye, saying that people who used to rent on average 1 week for the holidays are now rather booking for 2 or 3 weeks. And why is that? Is actually, well, first of all, people want to stay for longer, but also they can add some time working remotely, for example. That's something a lot of people are now doing. So those stays actually, the longer stays have increased in terms of 3 weeks rather than 1 week, and that's especially true, like I said, outside of big cities in that case. So that's also a very interesting trend, especially if you have this kind of properties in those destinations. And then moving on to amenities. That's something very interesting for you. That's very practical, let's say. So what people are actually looking for on Airbnb when they're doing the search. So as I mentioned already, they're looking to work remotely. So that goes through amenities such dedicated workspace and Wi-Fi. People are also traveling with friends and family, so in big groups. Books are larger than three. That's definitely a kind of new trend since the pandemic that is still there. And a very interesting one, in my opinion, traveling with pets, especially when this staycations are not traveling that far from home. And actually, for more details on this next slide, please, we've had observed the trend, how they move compared to pre-COVID. People looking for gardens and backyards in the filter when they're doing a search on Airbnb. Those filters have been used more than 300% more than they used to be. Same for self-checking. So that is, if you don't want to meet your host, basically, just get your keys from a key box, has increased 13%. Cooking basics, that really resonates with people staying for longer time, and people are actually clicking this filter more than before, 70% more than before. The wireless internet for people working remotely, especially, that is actually the number 4 top search amenity this year. Dedicated workspace increased 14%, again for remote working. And the pet friendly has increased 65% compared to January 2021. And this is really, really interesting, actually, I think. And we actually had to develop, I'll talk about this a bit later, but new features because of people traveling with pets. And yeah, I hope these figures are really helpful for you. This is really practical because those are amenities you can put on your listing on Airbnb and then actually attract people.
Exactly. Could we just jump over to the questions?
Sure.
We've had a question in from Siobhan asking, how do we know what category your property has been placed in?
It's going to be flagged actually if you looked at your listing on Airbnb. This is brand new, to be honest. So this is still work in progress. But again, yeah, you won't have control over this. You can apply to a category, but it will automatically be put in a category if it fits with the algorithm. Important to note, maybe anticipate the question. It can indeed feature in several categories. There's no problem at all. If it's a very architect house, very design, it's going to be in the design category. But if it's by the seaside, it's going to be in the seaside category as well, in waterfront. So no worries at all. But yeah, you should be able to see that on your listing, especially. I can't tell you where exactly right now, but it's there. But again, you can be in several categories, and it's going to be done automatically.
Maybe that's something we can double check after the event and include that in the follow-up where they will find that information.
Yeah.
Okay, Siobhan. Okay, we had a question in from Isaac saying, does Airbnb have any data for what people are looking to do while they're on their stays?
What you mean in terms of activities? That's a good question. I don't have that's data, and it's not something we ask, to be honest. But it's a good suggestion, to be honest. Good point. I don't have any data, to be fair. We don't ask this, but it's actually a fair question. I mean, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. So sorry, no, I don't have any data, but it's a good
Okay,
suggestion.
so no, Isaac. Okay, we've had a question here from Joanne and Tony. With stays of longer stays, do you need them to have a short-term tenancy agreement rather than the usual holiday agreements?
That really depends. I can give one answer because it depends on the location and what the local laws are going to be in this case. Yes, it could be in some places. Absolutely, you need to figure out, but you need to check with your own local council here because the rules are different everywhere, obviously. And but yes, it doesn't. Yeah, renting through Airbnb doesn't. Well, you still have to follow whatever local law is, and I wouldn't be able to tell you obviously because it's different everywhere. But yeah, be aware of this. The best is to contact the local council just to make sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got a few questions coming in now. Sarah Moss has said, can any details be given as to the keywords the algorithm is using for each category? We're near a beach, but it doesn't appear. Also, we're an eco stay, but the category is off grid, but we wouldn't necessarily write that in our description. But does it work off our amenities, e.g., if we have electric car chargers?
Yeah, so I don't have that level of details. I've had that question a lot since it was released. It's understandable. I'm actually trying to dig for information if I can get some more details. This is probably a lot of different requirements according to the categories, so I probably won't have a very exhaustive answer. Obviously, as soon as I have some more details, I will gladly share with you, Kelly, and for all of you to see. But yeah, all I can tell you is that the algorithm is actually looking, first of all, on those keywords, indeed, but also on pictures. So there are actual people who double check behind, if it actually falls here and there. But at first, it's done automatically. So it's possible that, for example, your listing would qualify for a category it's not in yet, but it will eventually. because again, this is a new product, obviously, so it could very well be. But as soon as I have details about which keywords, I don't know if they want to share that, to be honest, because you could. But in case I have it, I would be more than happy to share it with you, Kelly, and for you then to see, of course.
Lovely. Okay. Work in progress. I think that is definitely the word that we would apply to this because it's so new. I'm sure it's going to change over time as well. Okay, one last question and then we can carry on. Lynn has asked, should dedicated workspace not be the dining table, but another desk or chair completely?
Not necessarily. It's really if you feel like you could work from there, it's really just what it is. So it could be anything, and just be mindful. Obviously, if you put something that is kind of cranky, not exactly, you might actually pay for that in the review. But if you feel you have the good space for that, an actual table, even if it's a dining table, as you said, it's no problem at all. You can work from there. You just make sure that you actually tick the box because people are actually using this filter. That's what I mean mostly. If you feel you can work from your place, then by all means put it in because people are actually looking for this.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Are you finished with this slide? Should we move to the next one?
Yes, let's move on. Yeah, please.
Okay.
Okay, about our guest community. So a couple of things. Next slide, please. This is actually interesting. It's basically, as you know, Airbnb is a bit more than 10 years now. And at the beginning, it was mostly a backpacker website for people staying for the weekend, in a big city. It seems like it has changed, but if you think about it, this is the same people who just aged like anyone else, like you and me, simply like that. So now most of the guests on Airbnb are predominantly more than 30 years old. And we especially the older range of millennials, basically 30 to 39 years old, and followed closely by the Gen X, so 40, 49. That's me. And in UK, 90% of all users are actually between 30 and 60 years old. And that's very interesting. That also explains why Airbnb moved from the original model, especially started working with professionals who could offer accommodation outside of big cities, because people started to look for those kind of properties, and we just didn't have that on Airbnb. So that really explains the trend and what people are actually now looking for on Airbnb. We see that even older adults now, 60 and older, and the younger adults in the 30s that I just mentioned, they're leading what we call the leave anywhere trend on Airbnb. That is people who are actually staying, like I said, for months, even for more than a year sometimes, in Airbnbs or traveling from one Airbnb to another. It's an increasingly important move on Airbnb, and interesting to see that it's older people that are actually doing this trend. So that's important to know. It's basically the same people, they're just older now, so looking for different things.
I'm disconcerting that I'm considered to be older people doing it now.
Yes,
That's
we
me.
are all sorry, Kelly. So still about the people who book, I mentioned that they're traveling in bigger groups now. So traveling with family and friends, we had the figures that 34% of families traveling on Airbnb actually bring in the grandparents. Hence also the figures we see, the average age of people traveling on Airbnb. 1 in 5 actually bringing friends in addition to family. So yeah, basically on those, when it comes to choosing where to stay, 50% of the people we question about it express the need for spacious quarters to have multiple guests under one roof. So we've seen this kind of demand now. People are looking for several rooms, no longer just one private room. People are looking for a much bigger accommodation to host that many people, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And moving on to next, yes, I think that was it on the community. So why you should list on Airbnb? So I'm going to give you a few interesting things to know about Airbnb that might actually, for those of you who are not yet on Airbnb, obviously convince you. First of all, the size of the guest community I just mentioned. In UK, it's more than 385,000 hosts. And that actually represents 600,000 listings, because as you imagine, some of them are managing multiple properties, especially the professionals, as you must certainly know. So interesting to see also in the latest figures that more than a third of hosts in UK at least said that they're hosting to afford the rising cost of living. That's actually helping them. And on the other hand, nearly half of the guests said that they're booking on Airbnb to save money in those times. So that's interesting. We are actually helping in this sort of tense situations somehow, and it's still a very sizable community in the UK, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
So moving to the next slide, please. And yeah, that's something very important, especially I think especially for professionals who are renting the property by themselves, who don't necessarily need help, especially in summer. Professionals who have their own website, who have their own different channels and media, to advertise their properties. That's the feedback we have most of the time, is that thank you, but for summer I'm already fully booked. Well, the good thing with an OTA like Airbnb is that actually we're going to bring the demand across the year. And the chart I'm showing you here was actually drawn, for UK, especially, that people who are actually using Airbnb in addition to their direct bookings, so the bookings they get by themselves through their website or whatever mean it is, they actually get more bookings from Airbnb outside of summer, and that's helping actually, extending the peak season, and that's helping during the shoulder and low season. So as you can see, starting from October, when the bookings are starting to wither, that's where actually Airbnb is going to bring you more demand, something you might not expect actually would be successful in this period. And obviously, you get more bookings directly when the high season is upon us, from June to September. But it's still helping. So it's helping fill the calendar, and it's definitely helping beyond the season. So that's super interesting for people who actually book by themselves, but might think it's only about the peak season. It's not necessarily. So it's definitely a good thing to consider when working with Airbnb. And another benefit, it's still true, it has always been true, although there's been some new additions I mentioned earlier, but it's very important to remind that if you work with Airbnb, if you host with Airbnb, you automatically benefit from the air cover protection. It says air cover for hosts specifically. It's been rebranded last November because we added features. So as it always has, it's covering for damage caused by guests up to $1 million US dollars, because that's in US dollars. Automatically applies, like I said, but now it has been extended to some circumstances that were not necessarily covered. There's been the what we call the extra cleaning, and I'm pretty sure this is speaking to a lot of people who are working in this. You have cleaning fees usually, that's perfectly normal, but that's for what we consider normal cleaning. And you certainly have had situations where actually had to spend a bit more time on this, and you think it's not really fair, and you try to charge, and it's not actually being accepted because it's not a damage, is not impacting the security deposit. So now this is actually being covered by the air cover protection for the extra cleaning. And one interesting one I mentioned, people increasingly looking to travel with their pets. So we introduced a pet damage protection. So that's actually smart, because this is definitely something trending. And in addition, it was always there, but it's good to remind, there's also a host liability insurance in terms of liability claims up to $1 million as well. So that's pretty important. And again, this is all, you benefit automatically from this for every listing, every booking. If you're on Airbnb, it doesn't cost anything. So this is a very, very important advantage to hosts here. Moving to next, thank you. Good to remind that we have a 24/7 customer support available to you. And as professionals, especially when you identify as such automatically when you connect through a channel manager like Bookster, that's good to know. You also benefit from a dedicated account manager. In Scotland, that would be me. So no choice, but no worries, I'm doing a good job. We also have a dedicated landing page, and actually I'm going to share it right now in the chat, because I realize you can't click on the slide, obviously. Apologies, I'm looking for it. But yeah, it's a landing page with information dedicated specifically for professional hosts. It contains also what I just wrote below, all the program for upcoming webinars and every event that we organize specifically for professional hosts. You can check past webinars, look at them, and you can also subscribe to upcoming webinars there. And I found it, chat, here it is. The landing page, there you go. Mm-hmm. And also, and you have a, like I said, dedicated account manager. That would be me. This is my email address, but professional email address here, obviously. And I'm gonna put it in the chat as well. Just Airbnb.com. Do not hesitate to use it.
I'll include this in the emails as well. I'll put both of those details in there too.
Do not hesitate to use it, because this inbox is managed by myself. And the purpose is that professional hosts talk to people who are used to speaking with professional hosts. Perfectly aware that when you call general customer support on Airbnb, by default, those people don't necessarily deal with professional hosts, might be confused. There might be some this is perfectly understandable because it's still, non-professional hosts are still a big majority on Airbnb. That's simple as that. So in case you want to speak to someone specifically familiar with the kind of issues you might face, that's what this email address is there for. So do not hesitate to email. And I'm here also to for any other question, especially in terms of, if you have questions about starting working with Airbnb, very, very specific, again, to professionals, do not hesitate. That's what I'm here for. And I think I have a lot. Oh, yes, absolutely. Very important on Airbnb fees. So maybe a bit of explanation. On Airbnb, when you start, you create your own account, everyone can start by themselves without, help, asking for any help. By default, you have two options in terms of fees. So there's a split fee and the host only fee, basically. Sorry, I'm losing my words now. So basically, by default, you've set on split fee that says that you have a 3% commission for the host, but there's also a guest service fee that is variable. To give you an idea, it's usually around 14% for stays up to a month, and for longer stays, it may drop to 10%. And as you can see, I did a screenshot on the left-hand side. You have the price at which it appears to guests. Say your price is 100 per night. It also adds, in that case, a $14 service fee because it's 14%, so total 114. So the new structure that is going to be made available and actually mandatory as soon as you use a connection such as a channel manager, such as Bookster, actually, it's a fixed fee, so host only. So that's a 15%. So indeed, it's higher, but there's no fee, no variable fee for the guest. So if you don't change your price, that's what you see in the screenshot in the middle. Obviously, it becomes much cheaper for the guest. You make less money because the commission is higher, but it's much cheaper for the guest. So the thing is that you can actually adjust the price accordingly. That's what I'm showing on the screenshot on the right-hand side, so that the guest is still not paying a fee, but the final price is actually similar to what it was with the old commission structure. And in the end, you get the same revenue once we deduct the commission. So as you can see, it shows exactly as the same, like 114 or 15 per night for the guest. And it still shows, and that's interesting, the line for service fees. But this line is zero. That actually, encouraging the guests, saying that you don't pay any fee in here. So that's the host is paying it. So this is super interesting. And again, it's different structure for people who might get confused. It might think it's more expensive, but actually, if you adjust the price accordingly, this is the same, and it just shows, it appears in a much better light for the guest. That's what we saw.
Mm-hmm. And when we had a look at the Airbnb page itself for the listings, it would show the total price. So it wasn't showing £100 or $100 in this particular situation, and then you click on it and it shows the 114. It shows the full 114. So
Exactly.
your price won't be any different.
All fees included, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, lovely. Right, we've got a couple of questions, and then I think I'm taking over very quickly. So let me do Lynn's question because I can see it. Do we have to opt into the new commission structure, or will we be switched onto it automatically?
So I assume you mean if you do the connection with the channel manager, and in which case, indeed, you'll be switched to it automatically. Anyway, because it's the only option through the channel manager. So that will be done automatically.
Lovely. Okay, we've had a question in from Lin Yi, and this is quite long, so just give me a second. We manage holiday homes in Edinburgh, but it seems that most of the homes in Edinburgh don't show on the category filter other than the all homes category, e.g. only 4 homes show in the design category in Edinburgh if I search in September for 3 guests, and only 1 home in Edinburgh is selected for amazing views category. And here's the question: will all the homes be categorized in one of the categories in addition to all homes category, or will Airbnb only select certain homes to be qualified for certain categories in addition to the standard all homes category?
Okay, I get the basic idea. Like we said earlier, this is still work in progress, so it might evolve. But it's certainly not the point to, like you said, only put them in the all homes and or only a given number. That's not the idea. The algorithm is supposed to take every listing, however, whatever number of listings there are in this category in this specific region. If they qualify to the category, they will show in the category. And again, a listing can appear in several categories, provided there is whatever is required. Is the requirements in question ads still don't have all the details, unfortunately. Happy to share as soon as I have some more, but right now I'm really stuck. I just know it's about keywords and pictures for now. And like I said, it's brand new. It's certainly still ongoing, and it might actually change automatically in the next days or weeks for all I know. Now, if you feel some of your listings should appear in a category and they don't, you can try and use actually this keyword thing. That's a fact. The keywords are actually helping. So I don't know if you feel, yeah, one of your listings should appear in such category. Try to find. I don't have the exact keywords, obviously, but try to find something that would match the category that you think it should qualify. But again, it won't happen instantly. This will be done by an algorithm. It will be screened. This might take, like I said, a few days or weeks to show.
Okay. Lynn's come in with a supplementary question about the commission. If you're not using a channel manager, what are the commission options?
In that case, you have the options, actually. If you're not connected, you can, by default, usually set on the split fee, so 3% for you and a variable fee for the guest. But you just go to, on your Airbnb account, you go to account, payments and payouts, and you have service fees when you're not connected. You just select the two options. So the split fee or fixed fee, simple as that.
Lovely. Okay, there's no questions there. I'm going to move on quickly before we get any more questions in. Okay, that's actually the end of your slide, so thank you. Feel free, if you've got any more questions, start posting them now, and we'll cover all the questions at the end. I'm not going to take up a lot of time. I just really wanted to cover 2 points. Firstly, it's about making the data work for you, and secondly, it's about creating a great experience. So I'm only going to take 5 minutes or so bear with me. I want to start with making the data work for you. And for those of you that know me, you know why I'm doing this. Small backstory. Beginning of COVID, everything went online, and I was going to a lot of webinars, and I would listen to this amazing data, these amazing statistics, and I would be super interested, but I wouldn't action them, to try and help improve the SEO for my business or the results for my business. I'd just be interested, and then I'd go away and carry on doing my day-to-day job. And so what I'm very conscious of is when we do these events is to actually go through the statistics that Patrice has covered and actually think of what the actions you should take are. And I know Patrice has gone through some. I'm going to cover some other ones as well. So let me just go quickly on to split stays. So Patrice covered this. You do need to have a minimum night stay of 3 nights to be eligible. And you need your maximum night stay to be at least 7 nights as well. So if you are wanting to be considered, included in the split night stay, you need to adjust or at least check what your minimum night stay and your maximum night stay is. For Bookster clients who are here with me today, then you can log into your Bookster account and you can do this yourself, and you can do it on a property by property basis, just double checking and making sure that it's going to work for you. Okay. Nice and easy, actually, split night stays. They work a dream. The next points that Patrice was talking about was looking at flexibility, longer stays, and remote workers. So in particular, I was picking up on longer stays there because in Airbnb, it does demonstrate if there are discounts applied onto stays. So again, thinking about whether you use Bookster or use another software or you go directly with Airbnb, how are you going to attract these longer stays? And it doesn't necessarily have to be, a 2-month stay. You might think, well, I'd like to get some 3-week stays in, or even some 4-week stays. What will you do? So again, in Bookster, you can go in and you can choose to put a percentage discount or a fixed price discount depending on a length of stay. And you can choose whatever those lengths of stays are, and you can put multiple ones in if you want a discount for after 7 days and a different discount after 14 days. And that information is going to be obviously pulled up into Airbnb, and it's going to look more attractive to these longer stay guests. And ultimately, if a guest is staying with you for 2 or 3 weeks, that might actually suit you better because you've got less cleaning costs. You don't have to worry about going in and out of the properties. Patrice was talking about Airbnb guests, what they're looking for. Now, Patrice highlighted this, actually. This is all about looking at your listings and just double checking, have you clicked what facilities you've got? making sure that you are accurately representing the properties that you have in your listings, because that's what Airbnb guests are going to be looking at. They're going to be putting the filters in, so you need to make sure you've done that. So I was having a look in Bookster. There's lots of different amenities, features, whatever you want to call them, that you can add in here. Particularly of interest for this one is that we've added in dedicated workspaces. So this was, it is a new and really quite exciting option to be able to offer our spaces to people who are coming for, maybe they're making a longer stay because they're going to work in the accommodation before and after their holiday, or maybe they're just going to be working from the accommodation. So being able to demonstrate that you've got a dedicated workspace will, it's going to make you more attractive. So you've got that button in Bookster. Click it if you have a dedicated space that you think will be suitable for your guests. Put it in your descriptions as well. If it's going to be in the dining room and you think that's a good space, and put that information in. If you've got your own desk with USB ports and so on, put that in as well. Putting in your Wi-Fi. The fact that you've got fast Wi-Fi is so important. So that's information that you can be putting into your listings. And likewise, if you don't have something, but you think it's going to appeal to Airbnb guests, then you might want to consider that. If you already have a garden, for example, a private garden, but you don't have a barbecue, well, we know that Airbnb guests are looking for a barbecue. So you could consider adding that in. Now, obviously, there's other considerations in play as well. Maybe you don't want to have a barbecue. That's absolutely fine. But it's worth thinking about that too. Okay, so there's lots of different things here. That's actually all I'm going to do from thinking about Patrice's data. I would say if you have any questions about how you can apply it, you're more than welcome to contact Patrice or myself. The rest of the team, we're all here. Which brings me on to the actual team itself. Now, you can't see us. Robin walked past earlier, but, it's a great team. And we have a kind of singular goal, and our goal is based around creating great experiences. So part of those great experiences is how you're going to attract your guests. So working with Airbnb ties in directly to that. But we're also thinking about how we can make your experiences better, and how we can look after your owners. If you work with a team of owners, then we'll be looking at how we can support them. And also your own team, your cleaning team, your admin team. We're here and we think about these groups of people when we're creating all of our features and all of our elements and services in our software. So if you'd like to work with us, or you'd like to use the Airbnb connection with Bookster, then please do get in touch. You are more than welcome. And this is the team along the bottom there. You'll see our faces because this is us. We're not as big as the Airbnb, unfortunately, but that also means that you know exactly who you'll be getting. It'll be Patrice in Airbnb, it'll be us in Bookster. I'm going to leave it there. I'm very conscious of time and I don't want to go over. I know everyone's time is very precious. Let me just double check to see if I've got any more questions in while I've been talking. Okay, one last comment in from Linyi. Thanks very much. Would be great if Airbnb can have a look at the category filter in Edinburgh's market in the future.
That was for me.
I believe that one with you.
I'll definitely look into the categories. Like I said, it's brand new. I've been asking for information as well. Anything I can put my hands on and I can share with Kelly, she'll definitely be able to share with you. I hope I'll get something. Again, I'm not sure they will give me the exact keywords people are asking about, but anything I can put my hands on, I'll definitely let you know.
In that case, let's leave it there. Thank you so much, Patrice, for coming. Is there any final words you have before we say goodbye?
Just looking forward to working together. It's a great opportunity. I'm really glad to be here. And again, I shared my contact details. Please use them. Please ask me any question. If I don't know the answer, I'll go look for it. But please reach out to us. I'm more than happy to be starting to work together.
Fantastic. Okay, and thank you to everybody that's come along today. 4 o'clock. It was a bit of a weird time for us, at least, but I'm so happy that so many of you have made it, and thank you for the questions. And if you need anything, let us know. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.